Hello everybody and welcome to our today's webinar with the Migration Center team. Today's topic is content migration from complex ECMs to Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive. Before we start, we have a mandatory slide of housekeeping. Please note that all attendees are muted during the whole session. Should you have any questions, inquiries, remarks, please take a look at your GoToWebinar panel per default on your right-hand side. There is a questions box and you can enter your questions in there. We collect the questions and answer them in a dedicated Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Please also note that this webinar is being recorded, and once we have it processed, we'll share it with you. So before I hand over, let me introduce our speakers for today. Starting out would be Fredrik Olsen, responsible for Senior Sales and Partner Management. And up next would then be Cosmin Anikite, responsible for the live demo and part of the product development team in FME Romania. And with that being said, I would like to hand over to our first speaker, Fredrik.
Hello and welcome to our today's session. We're going to look into content migration from complex enterprise content management system to Microsoft SharePoint and OneDrive. So we all know how this is spreading throughout the world and the markets, and the market share is growing. So we thought we show you how you can use Migration Center in this case. After a few slides, we will look into a live demo, and after that, we're going to do some Q&A. All right. So Migration Center, what are the main problems we solve for our customers? In general, we preserve the data integrity through auditable migration processes. We help accomplish migration without any downtimes. We reduce migration duration significantly. We enable our clients to migrate several systems with just one single product. I think that's the most great part of this tool. Help to transform, enrich, clean, and standardize metadata. I think that's very important, especially when you move into a new system or that you bring old system into the main system that you have. We secure high volume data migration to make sure it is fast, save times compared to custom scripts, of course. And we secure legal and audit compliance migration. So we make complex migration projects predictable for our clients. So I hope you enjoy the today's show. One slide about FME, so you know who you're talking to. We are a partner for digital transformation in life science, industrial manufacturing, and much more. We do consulting, concept and development, and also maintenance. And one department is dealing with products, and that's what we're talking about today, and that's Migration Center. We have other products as well, but Migration Center is the most worldwide spread. We are coming from a history of enterprise content management, 25 years in that market. We do also BI, we do cloud, social collaboration, and us, of course, as an IT company, we do custom software development. We were founded in 1995, 280 employees throughout the world. And we have offices in Germany, and we have offices in Romania and also in the US. So we can cover the support very good, and we can be very close to our customers. So Migration Center, there's a lot of use cases to Migration Center. I'm not going to cover them all, but to cover a few of them is, if you start from on the left-hand side, is the migrating for legacy or outdated enterprise content management solution into a new platform, or on-premise to cloud migration, which is really taking off the last 12 to 24 months. We also do cloud-to-cloud migrations. There's also getting more and more need for that. And we also do migration to shorter shifts in place. So this is also a possibility to make a very fast migration. We do consolidation integration. We do rollout initial content migration from file shares. We do content migration from legacy or third-party products. We do decommissioning and retirement, so you can at the end save money by decommissioning your old system and bring everything into the new system. Archiving, when you migrate your data into a new system, why not archive a part once you are on the data, so you can split the data throughout the migration. We can also do email archiving, backup and recovering repositories. Some other interesting part that we have is, of course, reclassification of content objects, metadata enrichment and cleansing, and one very used use case is time-scheduled batch import. This is just to give you a small insight that Migration Center is not only used to migrate data from A to B, but there's other use cases as well. So if you look into Migration Center and additional specific use cases for Microsoft SharePoint, what we see there is the onboarding to SharePoint Online, end-to-end offering to migrate data from legacy or outdated on-premise solution to SharePoint Online. I think that's the most use case when it comes to our SharePoint path. But what you also do is shift and lift of on-premise SharePoint application to SharePoint Online. We manage the entire migration project in a full service agreement. We ensure legal and audit compliant migrations without system downtime and any interruption. So that means that your colleagues and your personnel can work during the migration that takes place. Then we also have Microsoft OneDrive. This is now getting more and more popular. On the OneDrive part, we have many out-of-the-box source system connectors for several platforms, and we can initially fill OneDrive with documents. But also what's important is that the OneDrive is used for personal file share. So we can replace personal file share with OneDrive. We can create new folder structure, set access rights, manage huge amounts of file shares, and keep the control of the whole migration process. We can also share documents for several systems with OneDrive. And of course, what you probably know about Microsoft, we support for several platforms, so you can migrate from several platforms into OneDrive, to mention a few. So why Migration Center? Well, first of all, Migration Center is 100% out-of-the-box content migration platform, so that you don't need any additional programming or scripting effort. So all you have to do is to configure Migration Center, and then you can start your migration. We have more than 500 customers throughout the world, thousands of projects worldwide. We don't know how many projects actually, because some customers are using Migration Center for more than 10 years. Migrations has been 15 plus years on the market. We have the possibility to, out of the box, set together more than 220 migration paths for multiple platforms, so you can choose what platforms you have and where you want to bring in, and that with one single tool. Like I said before, we can migrate without any downtime. It works without interrupting customer or business operations. So it means that your users will not be interrupted in their daily works. We are fit for regulated systems, so 90% of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies are using Migration Center, and many of them for many, many years. This is also a quality stamp, because we're not industry dependent. We actually fit for any industry, but this is the most regulated area, and if we can handle this area and this industry, we can handle all other industries as well. So it's a little bit of quality stamp. We have a global service presence, and we also have a high performance to manage large data volumes, so you can scale up Migration Center. We will never be the bottleneck. It's some in the IT environment, but we have been able to migrate a huge amount of documents in a short time. We're certified by leading ECM vendors, of course. It's also important, and we're looking into how Migration Center is built up. Migration is built up from 3 components. You have the Migration Center core, what you see here in the middle. The Migration Center core consists of the client, the database, and the content store. The client is where you control center for all migration phases, jobs, and processes. That's where you do your configuration. The database, an Oracle database, including the business logic and all the performance critical processes. So this is kind of the brain. And then we have on the left and right hand side here, you see the API framework. We call them job servers. The job servers runs all exports and scan jobs for the source system, and also import jobs for the target system. So those are connected directly to the system. So you see on the left hand side, you see the source system that we have out of the box. And on the right-hand side, you see the target systems that we have. If you, for some reason, don't find your system in here, we have what we call custom systems. That means that we can, in 10-15 days, develop a new SDK for you and adopt to that system. So very fast, we can have a connector that works for your system, and then we can bring it in here. So we have the whole infrastructure already here. A migration path, that is, for example, today, we're going to look into a migration path Documentum to SharePoint and SharePoint Online. And but each and every path you can just see here, you can combine them as you like, and that's where you can do more than 220 different possibilities. The API and framework I spoke about, customize a system on the source side, but also on the target side. So if you have a system that's not mentioned here, again, we can in a few days make it possible and adapt to that system as well. So just let us know. Managing large data volume and how the infrastructure is built up. I will start to give the word to Cosmin to take the technical part. We'll then later on also do the live demo. Maybe, Cosmin, you want to say a few words on this slide?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So basically, this slide is the diagram of the Migration Center components and how they can scale up in your environment to manage large data volumes. So on the top, you can see there are represented the client component, which is where you will basically, it's a control center where you create and configure scanners, importers, and make sets and trigger all the migration operations. And in the middle, you can see on the left and right are the job servers, which can be one or many installed to scale up depending on your environment and your migration needs. And of course, the database can be scaled up as it's installed in an Oracle database, and the Oracle database server itself can be scaled up or down as needed.
Okay. Today's use case we're going to look into is how we migrate and decommission into SharePoint, and we bring data into SharePoint Online and Microsoft OneDrive. So it's a quite straightforward picture where we see that you have different, in this case, it's all going to be Documentum. And on the right-hand side, we can then split the data into SharePoint Online, and we're going to bring data into Microsoft OneDrive. And we're going to also talk about a little bit what kind of data we are bringing into the different area. SharePoint is more the business data, and OneDrive is more used for your personal data and user data. What we see in the live demo is the migration approach that we have, and I'm going to give the word to Cosmin again before he starts the live demo.
Yeah, so for the process of migration, the overview of the process of migration, we take a step-by-step approach. So to perform a migration from source to target, you need to follow these main steps. The first one being the analyze and extract, or the scanning step, which is where you configure scanners to export the metadata and the content from your source system into Migration Center. After that, you move on to the organize phase, where you can split what you have scanned, all the objects that you have scanned, into migration sets. After you have configured the migration sets, you will configure transformation rules, and basically that's the first step, which is to configure transformation rules by which the source metadata maps to the target metadata, and also transform the metadata. After you have transformed it, you also have an option of validation to validate the metadata, as you can see there, preventing a lot of errors before even touching the target system. And once everything is validated and looks fine, you can proceed to the import step, which is basically similar to the scanning phase. It will take all of the metadata and the content and push it into the target system. And that's the general migration process, which we will see shortly during the live demo. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, hope the screen sharing is working.
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's take a look at what exactly we are going to migrate. So I have here a Documentum system, which I will be using as my source. And I have a cabinet here called Bank Demo. And inside this cabinet is just a folder structure with some documents inside of a custom type, which also has some custom metadata on it. And we will be migrating these documents to SharePoint. And we will be doing, as you saw in the demo, we will be doing a split migration where some of the documents will be going into SharePoint and some of the documents will be going, in this case, in my personal OneDrive here, where I don't have anything currently. Okay, so going to Migration Center. Right now, what you are seeing is the Migration Center client window, so the control center. I am already connected to a database instance with Migration Center installed. And I also have some job servers configured, and I will be using this job server to perform the scanning and the import operations. The first step, like we said earlier, is to configure a scanner. We have to go to the scanners view, and to create a new scanner, you just click on the new window, you give it a name, you select what type of scanner it is. So in this case, it will be a Documentum scanner. And you also specify a job server where you want the scanner to run. You saw after we selected the type of the scanner, the list of parameters below was populated. And let me just open one that I have configured earlier. So we have some basic data for connecting to our source system, user and password, the repository. In Documentum's case, the connection is done through the DFC. So that is already installed on the job server and configured. And I have specified here we'll be scanning the bank demo cabinet with everything inside it, and we'll be exporting only the documents of type FME document, which has some custom metadata. There are a lot of options for the Documentum scanner. It provides a lot of different functionality, which we will not go into. What is important to note is this parameter here called export location. And I have specified a local folder on the job server machine where the content will be exported. So let me start this scan. We just do that by clicking on Run and then clicking OK. You can see the status of the job has changed here to running. We can click on the history. In here, we will see basically a history of runs for this particular scanner configuration, as you can change the properties of the scanner and run it multiple times. You can see the number of objects being processed. And what is happening right now is the job server component, where we triggered this scan job, is connected to, it has connected to the Documentum system and is extracting all of the objects, all of the documents, keeping the metadata in the Migration Center database and exporting the content on the export location that we have specified. So once this scan has finished, we will be able to see all of the objects with all of the metadata in Migration Center, and the content will be exported to this temporary staging area, which means that we are no longer dependent on the source system. Once you have finished your scanning, you no longer need connection to the source system to perform the to finish the migration, to process the objects. The scan should finish. It already had finished. We have 90 scanned objects. We can even take a look at the scanned objects. So what we are looking at now is each row represents an object from Documentum. That includes versions, individual versions. And as we can see here, we have these three objects which represent a version tree, and they are kept together linked by these two internal attributes. So we do maintain the version tree structure references during the scan, and we're able to recreate version trees when we import in any target system that supports versioning. We also can see here on the content location column, each individual version's content has been exported, and the location and the references is saved here. And after some internal columns up until here, all the other columns are basically all of the metadata from our Documentum system, including the object links and any custom metadata that we might have. So everything is exported, and you can take a look here. You can even export this to a CSV file, and yeah, very, very easy to do. So once we have our scanned objects, we're ready to move on to the organize phase, where we split the data into migration sets. And quickly, let me just show you how to create a migration set. You just click on the new button. You can give it a name, and then you select the migration set type, which is basically your migration path. In this case, this would be, for example, what we will have for this migration. I will just show you. So we have two mix sets, one for migrating into SharePoint Online and the other for migrating into OneDrive. As you can see, there's two different mix sets type. Both of these mix set types and migration paths can be used to migrate into SharePoint. One of them uses the web service API, and the other one, the batch importer, uses the newer the migration API from Microsoft, which can provide a significant performance boost for very large volumes of data. And with this migration API, we're also able to import into OneDrive. So let me open one of the SharePoint migration set. We have the name here, the type, and moving on to the next tab, we are able to select the actual objects that we want to include in this migration set. So this is the scan run that we just performed, the demo Documentum with the 90 objects. And if we double click on this, we have selected that we want to include this scan run. As you can see, I have other scans from Documentum, which I could include here in the same mix set. But we also have the option to exclude objects. So to filter, we don't need to include all of the objects. And the first filter tab is a simple filter which works on exclusion. So I have excluded all documents from a certain root folder, the Mueller AG one, and I have left all the other ones included in this mix set. We also have some more advanced filtering options. These filters work more on a rule-based system, so you would be able to make rules such as create a rule to include only objects where the creation date is larger than a certain date, and so on. But we'll be using just the simple filter. So let's select our objects, which click on the Select Objects button, and this will lock the objects into this migration set. And you can see here we have total objects 56 and unprocessed 56. And as we move on with the migration process, you will see these objects move from the unprocessed state to the transformed and validated state, and eventually into the imported state. Let's do the same thing for the OneDrive migration set. So we go here, we select our scan run. We can see here that because we locked some of the objects in a different mix set, the number of available objects has changed. So we have only the remaining objects here. So we are able to select these objects as well. And once you have selected your objects and split them into migration sets, it's time to move on to the transformation rules part of the migration. So we'll click on Edit Transformation Rules for this particular mix set. And without getting into too many details on how the transformation rules work, basically you create a transformation rule. You can give it a name here. And then you have a wide array of transformation functions, which are basically at their core mostly, most of them string manipulation functions. And they allow you to get source attributes, get source metadata, and generate target metadata from it. So for example, you can take the value of a certain source attribute using a concatenate function and concatenate it with a static value and then the value of a different attribute. And as you can see, you can chain multiple functions together. So this allows you basically to create rules by which the source metadata gets mapped to the target metadata. So I have created some, for the SharePoint mix set, I have created some rules for getting the name of the documents without any modifications, getting the creation and modified dates to maintain the internal dates values for these. And I also have mapped the custom attributes that we had here. Let me quickly reopen this. Contract number, customer name, and department. These are some custom metadata that we had on the source, and we'll be keeping these custom metadata in SharePoint when we move. Below we have some system rules. These function in the same way as regular transformation rules, but they have a fixed name and purpose. So this one will determine which document type, so content type, will set in SharePoint. This one will determine the parent folder, and I have used one of the functions to trim the folder path to remove the first folder, which was the cabinet name. And we also have the site where we will do the import, and that will be the site I just showed you earlier. So we have a similar configuration in the OneDrive mix set, except a lot of the regular rules, since this is a different type, we have moved in the system rules. So we have the name here, the modified date, and the creation date. And of course, the site will be the OneDrive personal site, and we'll keep the folder structure as it is. Once you are satisfied with the transformation rules, you're ready to perform transformation and validation on the objects. So we'll transform and validate both mix sets, and you can see the number of objects has moved on the validated column. And now we can take a look, instead of viewing source objects like we saw earlier from the scanner view, we can take a look at the processed objects. And the processed objects will show you the generated metadata for the target objects. Maybe let's take a look at the SharePoint ones. We can see here we have kept the customer name and department ones. We have kept the name and modified dates. The parent folder, if you notice, no longer contains the first folder, which was the cabinet, because we trimmed that down. And this allows you basically to evaluate and take a look at the metadata that's going to go in your target system even before even attempting to import them into the target. So if something doesn't look right with the transformation rules, you can go back, change the transformation rules, reset the objects, and transform them again. I have also applied transformation and validation in the same step. And what validation does is it compares the generated values for each object against the object model. So if you have, for example, date attributes that of course require a valid date format for a successful import, then if one object, for example, during the transformation rules will have an invalid format for that value, you will get a validation error, and that allows you to catch a lot of errors early on during the transformation rules phase. Once you have your objects validated, then we are ready to move on to the import phase. The importer window looks very similar to the scanner one. You create one in the same way by clicking the new button and selecting a location where you want this to run. And I have already created a SharePoint one for the SharePoint Online, which will be migrating into SharePoint. So what we have different from the scanner window is we have this Mixsets view, Mixsets tab here, and this allows you to select which Mixsets you want to actually import with this importer configuration. So we have selected both our Mixsets for both our importers here, and we are ready to just run it just like we did with the scanner. So we will trigger the SharePoint one. You can see the status has changed to running, and at the same time we will trigger the OneDrive migration. So right now, basically the migration process from our side is finished. All that's left is for the importers to do their job. You can take a look in the history of each importer and see the import runs just like you could with the scanner. You can see it's already started to process some objects. You could also see a progress of the objects being processed in the Mixsets view. If we refresh, we can see some objects have already started to process. And if we go to the SharePoint site, we see that the folders have already been created for the folder structure, and the documents have been imported. If we take a look at the details of this object, we can already see here the modified date is being kept to 2015, and we also see the custom metadata that we have kept from the source, which is the contract number, customer name, and department. Yeah, basically everything that we have set is here. And let's see if the OneDrive import is already finished. You can see the last import status is import. And if we go here, we see the last, on the importers, the last import in the status is finished. And let's take a look here, and we can see the folder structure for each of our objects has also been created. Yeah, and this Mueller AG folder has also been created here. So yeah, that is the process of performing migrations to SharePoint and OneDrive with Migration Center. The process that you have seen currently applies to basically all of our migration paths. Of course, there are some paths that might require some different rules and different configurations, but the overall process of creating scanners, splitting the objects into migration sets, creating transformation rules by which the metadata gets mapped to your target system, and then running importers is going to be pretty much the same for most migration paths. So yeah, that is the live demo. Thank you. Let's see now if we have questions, I guess. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cosmin. So we'll give the word to Mark.
Yes, thank you both, Fredrik and Cosmin, for the great presentation and those insights into Migration Center. And as Cosmin just mentioned, we're about to head to the Q&A section. But before that, please let me inform you that we have a dedicated product website, which is migration-center.com. And on there, you can find all the product features Fredrik talked about. success stories from former customers, our service portfolio. We also offer additional to our product. We offer our former recorded webinars for you to watch at any time you like. We have a very good content migration blog, and most importantly, we offer a free trial version for Migration Center, which is called the free evaluation copy, with which you can test Migration Center within your own system landscape for a 14-day trial period. So just head to our website and check out the content we offer. All there is left to say, that's the end of this webinar. Thank you for attending today. We hope to see you again soon. Have a look at our website, migration-center.com. And should you have any further questions after the session, don't hesitate to reach out to us, either through our website contact form or through info@migration-center.com. Any way is possible. And I see there's another question coming in. Can you send the recording? Yes, of course. Once we have it processed, we will send you a link with a recording where you can rewatch it as often as you want to. And with that being said, thanks again. Hope you have a great day, and see you again soon. Goodbye.